Welcome back to the Republic Brothers Podcast. I'm Mike, and he's Matt, and this is episode 20. Today's December 10th, 2025. Today we're diving into the pipe bomb investigation again, because the arrest didn't answer anything. It actually made the whole story even stranger. We'll break down the shooting at Tim Pool's house, and why he's considering shutting down his show. Next up, Trump just announced the U.S. seized a sanctioned Venezuelan oil tanker, and the footage looks like a movie. And finally, we've got the wild clash between Seattle Pride and the Egypt-Iran World Cup match. Let's get started. All right, Matt, to kick the show off, I want to try to bring up a social media post someone sent me. Someone's always sending me something they saw that was stupid, or I see it for myself, and I just have to share this one with you and get your reaction. So I'm going to read the post, and then I'm going to show you the picture, and you can comment on it.
Okay, let's go for it.
So the post says, "Before you laugh at children who believe in Santa Claus, remember there are adults who believe in NASA."
Yeah.
And this guy is dead serious.
Is that someone you know?
Yes, it is someone I know. They post a lot of questionable things on their social media.
I would also bet he believed in Santa Claus for a time, so wow. You can't fix stupid.
No. So, yeah, there are people out there that do not believe in NASA, apparently.
I'm guessing he's a flat earther as well.
I don't think so, but you never know. I just had to bring that up. But speaking of things that are unbelievable, let's talk about this pipe bomber case again, because the arrest didn't solve anything. It actually made the story way weirder. So the FBI arrests Brian Cole Jr. He's 30, lives in his mom's basement in Woodbridge, Virginia, which is about 20 minutes outside of D.C., and he's described by his own family as borderline autistic, extremely naive, and mentally slow. His grandmother literally said he may be 30, but he's got the mind of a 16-year-old. This is the part that doesn't add up. We're being told that this man, a socially isolated, mentally challenged kid, somehow outsmarted the FBI for almost 5 years. This is the same FBI that tracked down 1,500 people from January 6th by combing through cell towers, CCTV, and even random social media posts. But somehow the pipe bomber, the biggest unsolved piece of January 6th, they just couldn't crack it.
Yeah, it's very weird. I added this to the list of topics we were going to talk about for a reason. It is very hard for me to believe that someone described that way by his own loved ones would be capable of planning and evading law enforcement for this long. There are so many questions this brings to mind, and I really hope this trial is public and the judge will allow cameras in the courtroom to show the evidence to the people.
So here's where the questions start. According to the FBI's own filings, Cole's phone hit 7 separate tower pings near the DNC and RNC between 7:39 and 8:24 p.m. on January 5th. Right time, right place. And the FBI had this information within weeks of the attack. Not only that, they identified 186 phones of interest and narrowed those down to 36 people to interview. Then 51 phones were immediately excluded because they, quote, belong to law enforcement or people on an exclusion list. That leads to the next twist. A former FBI official, Steve D'Antonio, I don't know if I'm saying that right or not, who ran the D.C. field office, later told Congress that one of the cell phone carriers sent corrupted data, and that's why the investigation stalled. But when Congress asked the phone companies, every single one of them said, nope, we never sent corrupted data, and the FBI never told us there were problems. So, the FBI says the data was corrupted, the companies say it wasn't corrupted, and Cole's phone data was clearly readable enough for them to use it in a court years later.
It could be a massive cover-up to try and let this person off the hook, but more likely than not, I think it's this FBI official not doing his job and trying to pass the blame to someone else. He probably hoped no one would ask the cell service providers about it. But the odds that one cell service provider sent corrupted data is pretty small. What are the odds that all of them sent corrupted data?
Exactly. Then that leads us to the surveillance footage. The FBI collected 39,000 videos, Matt, but the only footage that they released publicly, low res, choppy, can't identify the person. In one clip, a blur bar or a little pixelation thing covers the suspect's eyes. Some people say it was intentional. Others say it might be goggles. Either way, no one recognized the bomber, and the FBI never released clearer footage, even though we know they had it. This is where things turn political. So, according to a congressional report, by late February 2021, just weeks into Biden's term, the FBI quietly started pulling resources out of the pipe bomb investigation. At the same time, they're flooding resources into arresting January 6 trespassers, even grandmothers. Kash Patel, former House Intel counsel, said the quiet part out loud. He called it, quote, intentional negligence. Because think about the optics. If the bomber turned out to be a young black man and not a white ultra-MAGA extremist, it would blow up the entire narrative Democrats were pushing about January 6th being a white supremacist insurrection.
Well, that is what we mentioned as a possibility the last time we talked about this. It's looking like it was intentional, which brings into question these people's morals. It's shocking that our top law enforcement did not care about solving the case or bringing justice and upholding the rule of law that they claim to love while they bash Trump for breaking laws, allegedly. It was simply about controlling the narrative and maintaining their power. This is just another example of why people don't trust most government institutions. Did you know the only government service that is trusted by the masses is the National Park Service? What does that tell you? And while we're bashing on the government for it, we can also bash the media again. The media basically let this story go. They had nothing to say about it. The only media companies that are trusted by people is the Weather Channel. What does that tell you?
Which is ironic, too, because they get it wrong most of the time.
The only job you can have where you're wrong 90% of the time and keep your job is a meteorologist.
Sounds like a good job, to be honest. It's funny, we have this whole story about all this stuff, and the amount of times that someone on the left brings up January 6th is crazy. They need that story so bad to fit into their narrative that it's almost laughable at this point. Anytime you say anything about political violence is always on the left, the first thing they say is, oh, well, what about January 6th? They obviously don't know the whole story. And now we have this story coming out with these pipe bombs and what looks like them letting this guy skirt away on purpose. Here's the big picture. A suspect described as mentally slow and autistic somehow outmaneuvered the FBI for half a decade. The FBI had his phone data immediately. They told Congress the data was corrupted. The carriers all say it wasn't. Then they sat on 39,000 videos but released only blurry, barely usable clips, and by early 2021, they stopped focusing on the bomber entirely. Now, I'm not saying this guy is innocent. I'm not saying he's guilty. What I am saying is none of the pieces fit together. And when the FBI story doesn't add up and the political incentives line up perfectly to ignore certain evidence, people are going to ask questions. This whole thing stinks.
We have regularly mentioned that when things are attributed to either evil or incompetence, it's usually incompetence. But in this case, it's really looking intentional. As I said, we need to be able to watch this case so we can get answers for ourselves. It's hard to run from law enforcement, so how did someone who is mentally slow evade our top law enforcement officers? There's so many questions that we need answers to. I also would like the FBI to do an investigation. It's new leadership, obviously. This is the Trump Department of Justice and the Trump FBI. But they should absolutely be looking back at the 4 years Biden was president and the people running the show in the FBI and look at everything they did to see where political decisions were made instead of decisions to get justice correct.
Yeah, if they were intentionally letting this guy get away with it, I would really like to see some people charged with this. Like, this is crazy. If they knew all this information and they purposefully let this guy go because it didn't fit the narrative and it would make them look bad, somebody has to suffer some consequences here.
That would quite literally make them an accomplice to evading law enforcement.
Yeah. Somebody has to be held accountable. We can't just let this slide. Well, this is another crazy story that's been circulating. So everyone knows Tim Pool, and if you don't, you should look him up. He's got a huge platform. I like listening to him because he's not left or right. He's more in the middle, and he's able to criticize both sides. So Tim Pool posted on X that someone drove by his house in West Virginia and, quote, opened fire. He said no one was hurt, and his security team reviewed the incident and passed on the information to law enforcement. He claims the shooting might have been an intimidation attempt. Fast forward to the next day, and Candace Owens replies to his X post asking for the receipts, basically, which is kind of ironic coming from her since she keeps telling us all this information about Charlie Kirk's assassination and how Turning Point was involved and the government and this, that, and the other, yet she won't post any concrete evidence. Now, I don't remember the guy's name, but some streamer called the police department live on his stream and confirmed that the police department had an incident report on this. So we have no reason to believe that it's not real, even though some people are saying that it didn't happen. As someone who's listened to Tim Pool frequently, I don't see him making up a story about a shooting at his house. I 100% believe that it happened. Pool then issued a warning that his show, Timcast IRL, might be shut down soon because of death threats and his property being shot up. He cited the risk to his family's safety and the financial and psychological toll of increased security. Brandon Tatum, another great listen if you've never heard of him, said on his podcast after Pool's announcement that he's involved with a security business that takes donations to cover security for people. He doesn't want Tim Pool to cancel his show. He says we need Pool's voice and we need him to keep going. And I agree with him. Political violence rears its ugly head once again, but we need voices like Tim Pool, and I hope he can figure out how to keep the show going while keeping his family safe.
I have listened to him a few times, and I watch many of his clips on YouTube, and I see him as a pretty smart guy. He thinks through his arguments, and he usually comes with receipts, like you said. I do believe this incident happened. When you go to the police, it certainly adds a level of credibility, given there can be ramifications for false reports. I would also believe someone who would not be liked by the left because of his views on things like free speech could be the target of intimidation tactics or a political assassination. We saw it with Charlie Kirk. I would hope his show is not going to be canceled or ended. I really don't want to see anyone deplatformed or forced to get out of the spotlight for safety reasons. I think it's really nice what Brandon Tatum offered. I'm glad to see someone out there has some potential solutions. In an ideal world, you wouldn't need a team of security guards to keep you safe, but is this an ideal world? No.
Yeah, Tim Pool and Brandon Tatum are two podcasts that I listen to pretty regularly. And I hadn't actually even seen the episode with Tim Pool announcing, this whole thing with maybe his show being canceled. I actually was just listening to Brandon Tatum's podcast, and he played the clip of Tim Pool, talking about how because he's going to have to increase his security, that was putting a financial strain on the business and that it was a lot of money. And then Brandon Tatum started breaking down how much money it costs for you to have security. Whether it's security at your building, security just at your house, security following you around, like all these different things. He was like, man, if you have all those things and you have, a couple of guys following you around, he said, just security alone is more than $1 million a year. He said, if you just wanted to hire one guy to follow you around most days of the year, it would cost you $200,000 or $300,000 a year between the travel for that person and, food, hotel, all that kind of stuff, it's $250,000 or more. So that's why I don't remember the name of the company. I wish I did. I wish I would have wrote it down. But Brandon Tatum's security company, like I said, they take donations and so that they can provide security to people that may not be able to afford it otherwise. So I think that's a really good thing. I hope that works out, or Tim Pool can at least figure something out, because it would be a tragedy if somebody had to stop their podcast and their show because somebody out there tried to kill him or allegedly tried to kill him or, intimidate him in some way.
Well, and we shouldn't be surprised that we're in this position. A poll not long ago of liberals found more than 50% of liberals think that words are violence. So if you believe that words are violence, you can meet violence with violence, right?
Yeah. And unfortunately, Tim Pool is not the first, and he will not be the last that this happens to. I'm sure we'll see another story where the story becomes public. I mean, obviously we know that other podcasters and other people with, political ties get threatened all the time when they're in public. And I mean, just you have other political influencers who go out of their way to try to stop people and harass them. Talking about Nick Fuentes trying to chase down Ben Shapiro and his family.
Yeah, Ben's the perfect example. Look how much security he has to have.
Yeah. But again, we hope that all gets sorted out. I enjoy listening to Tim Pool's podcast, and I really hope that he doesn't have to shut it down. I am sure that somebody will step in and help him in some way to keep his voice out there. Whether it's somebody silently or publicly, I don't see any reason why somebody won't step in and be like, hey, we're going to help you out with security or whatever. But all right, Matt, let's talk about the move the U.S. just pulled off the coast of Venezuela, because this one is wild. So, Matt, walk us through what went down, because Reuters laid out a pretty crazy timeline for this.
The U.S. has seized a sanctioned oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela. This move increases tensions between the two nations and signals a new effort to go after the main revenue generators for Venezuela. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi posted on X that the seizure warrant for the vessel was carried out due to the vessel transporting sanctioned oil from Venezuela and Iran. A video was posted showing two helicopters approaching a vessel and armed individuals rappelling onto it. While the vessel was not named by the Trump administration, British maritime risk management group Vanguard said the tanker was named Skipper. The U.S. imposed sanctions on the vessel when it went by a different name and was being used to transport Iranian oil, trading oil when it was called the Adissa. Reports from Reuters say the vessel had 1.1 million barrels of oil on board. Trump announced the move, and when asked what would happen with the oil, he responded, quote, "We keep it, I guess." It's an interesting move, and it brings up a few talking points. But first, the media is really pushing the fact that oil prices went up after this move was announced. The price for a barrel of oil went up 27 cents for the day. That is a 0.4% increase. So there's not really any reason to panic or worry. Venezuela produces about 900,000 barrels of oil each month, and that is up from their previous production numbers. Just keep in mind this is very heavy and dirty oil, and most of it is priced very low and sold to China to get around sanctions. But with China getting oil from Russia and Iran, also sanctioned countries, Venezuela has to sell at a steep discount to move this oil.
Okay, so I did not see this whole story. So explain to me exactly, why is it that we sanctioned this boat? Why exactly did we take over this vessel?
So sanctions are put on governments essentially to slow down their sources of revenue. It's why we put sanctions on Russia and Iran, because those are nations very dependent on oil. So if you can slow down the flow of oil, you can really hurt the government, and that might get them to the negotiating table. As far as why we took the vessel, we had sanctioned the oil. We kind of talked about the enforcement arm of a no-fly zone. That's kind of what this is. We put in place a measure that said they can't sell oil. They still did it, and this was the way they were doing it, so we're taking that from them. It's a bit of the enforcement measure. It ultimately is one ship. Now, that was a lot of oil. And will we continue to do this? If we do, it really will hurt Venezuela. Venezuela's government doesn't have a lot of revenue streams, so if you take the biggest one, it will really hurt the people.
Okay, so basically we told them they're not allowed to sell the oil, and then they tried to sneak the oil out.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha.
Now, we've been on the topic of Venezuela many times, and this is the first known action against an oil tanker. We've discussed the many incidents involving the cartels and their boats. All of this comes as the U.S. has deployed military assets to the region. The big question I have here for Trump would be, what's the end game? I know Trump has said he wants to reassert America as the power in our own hemisphere. But how long do we do this? What does it cost us? And what do we get out of it? I haven't heard Trump say exactly what the objective of all of this is. There's no political will in the U.S. for an occupation of Venezuela. Keeping in mind it's not the easiest country to occupy. The capital city on a map isn't far from the ocean, but do keep in mind there is a mountain range in there. I would like to hear Trump answering a few questions on what we ultimately want to get out of this, because I'm not really sure what our end game is here. And now, while we're on the topic of Venezuela, I wanted to bring up something that people are saying about the strikes on the boats. We have been hearing many in the media claim they are illegal and that Trump has committed war crimes. So I wanted to talk about this. Some in the Trump administration have correctly claimed that we identify the target. That could be the vessel itself or possibly the people on the boat. When the military shoots at a target, they sit back to see if they eliminated the target. If the target was the boat and the cocaine on the boat, if the vessel did not sink, you would shoot again to eliminate the target completely. That is something every nation in the world does. It is not unique to the U.S. This, to me, is people who don't like Trump going after him on anything and everything they can to get him. They complain about Trump with these boat strikes, but did they say anything about Obama dropping 25,000 bombs in his last year in office? We know of instances where Obama did this so-called double tap strike, and it was not a story. He bombed 7 nations his last year in office. Did you hear anyone complaining about it?
So, where do you think this misconception comes from, or this idea from people on the left that this is illegal? Where are they coming up with this idea that we are not allowed to bomb these boats that are carrying drugs into the country?
Well, it depends on which liberal you ask. Some of them say that we don't know that they're carrying drugs. Some of them say we don't know where they're going and we don't know where they're going to sell this. If I showed you a picture of these boats, not a chance you would call it a fishing boat. It's not doing any fishing. They're absolutely carrying drugs. So they argue on the logistics side that we don't know where they're going, or we don't know where they're carrying stuff to. I think what got a lot of them angry is they were told a story and saw some video of people hanging onto the side of a boat that had already been struck, but was clearly not sinking, and some people were trying to repair the boat. They ordered a second strike to sink the boat. They say that's a war crime because one of the individuals on the boat was signaling for rescue, while others were trying to fix the boat so that they could continue. It kind of blows my mind that there's people putting up so much of a fight to prevent people from bringing drugs into the country, which are going to destroy some people's lives and potentially lead to deaths of our own people. I have said many times, I have no problem with this, keep it coming, and I am still standing firm on that position. I don't mind even the double tap, as it's called by some. If the boat's not sinking, hit it again.
It's funny too, though, because if you think about it, even if the liberals knew and we had concrete evidence, I mean, I guess, which technically we do anyway, we've discussed that before, but even if they knew that there were drugs on these boats, they would still have a problem with it. They would stick up for illegal drugs as opposed to sticking up for the people that those drugs might potentially kill when they come into the country.
And those are people they don't even know. You don't know those illegal criminals. And they're foreigners. They're not Americans in the vast majority of cases. But you'd rather stick up for them rather than your neighbor. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yep, it's the age-old meme where we say if Donald Trump came out and said that oxygen was good for you, that liberals would stop breathing.
Yeah, if he ever cures cancer, they're going to be in the streets complaining they have a right to die from their cancer.
Yep. All right, Matt. So here's a story that blew up this week in sports. We don't generally talk about sports, but this is a good one. So Egypt and Iran are furious at FIFA because one of their World Cup matches is scheduled to be played in Seattle on a day that's tied to a big Pride celebration. And Seattle's basically saying, yep, Pride's happening, enjoy the game. Seattle has Pride Fest every year, and they have already designated June 26th as their Pride-themed soccer day, way before FIFA dropped the Egypt-Iran match into the schedule. So now you have two very conservative countries, both with strict anti-LGBTQ laws, saying, absolutely not, we're complaining to FIFA, shut this down. But FIFA claims they're not involved. The Pride stuff is all outside the stadium. Art contests, street celebrations, community events. One of the art pieces is literally a rainbow sun over Mount Rainier while a crab holding a cup of coffee plays goalie. Very Seattle. But Egypt sent an official letter to FIFA basically saying, we are categorically rejecting anything supporting homosexuality around this match. Iran's football president said the exact same thing on state TV, called it unreasonable and illogical. And he wants to bring it up at the next FIFA council meeting. They want FIFA to intervene and shut down local celebrations, which obviously FIFA can't do. They only control the stadium and the official fan zones. They don't control the city of Seattle. Seattle basically said, appreciate the feedback, we're moving forward. They're leaning into it. The mayor-elect even posted, with matches on Juneteenth and Pride, we get to show the world that everyone is welcome here. They're not budging, and here's why it's blowing up even bigger. Egypt and Iran both criminalize or aggressively prosecute LGBTQ people. Iran has a documented history of harsh punishments, even executions in some cases. So the symbolic clash could not be bigger. The bottom line, the match is still happening in Seattle. Pride celebrations are still happening. Egypt and Iran are still mad, and FIFA is stuck in the middle pretending not to notice.
I could not stop laughing when I saw this and who the teams were. I know we don't talk sports here, and we're both pretty big on many different sports, but I could not stop laughing. FIFA really can't do a lot, but they do have an out. As the Pride stuff is out of their control, it would certainly create some clashes in culture when people from the Middle East or Africa, where it is punishable by death to be a homosexual, come across Seattle liberalism. No surprise that the two teams are complaining. What I really find funny, though, is that they put these two teams in this game when the other two teams in the group are New Zealand and Belgium, who are playing at the exact same time in Vancouver on that day. They have to play at that time, but I wonder if FIFA would pull the trigger and have Egypt and Iran play in Vancouver and move Belgium, New Zealand to Seattle, where it is legal to be gay. They don't throw you off buildings in those countries when you're gay. Part of me kind of hopes they don't, just so it's really funny that two teams that would throw you off a roof for being gay are the Pride match. And I wonder how many people celebrating Pride would go into the match with these two teams in it.
You know what would be super funny is if they're like, oh yeah, we're going to switch the games and we're going to have Iran and Egypt play in Vancouver instead. If Vancouver, because it is Canada, if Vancouver decided to have a Pride Day too.
Very liberal up there. I just find it really funny that, you have the LGBTQ plus people for Palestine and all of these people. I saw a video where they asked a member of Hamas what they would do with LGBTQ people. And do you know what he said?
Probably not something nice.
He said, no. We do not judge. We let Allah judge. We'll arrange your meeting with him. Now, given June is Pride Month, I wonder how many other Pride parades will pop up around some of these World Cup matches. It will be quite funny if these matches continue with nations that don't let you be gay.
Well, we will certainly keep an eye on that and see how that plays out. I am very interested to see how that goes, especially if FIFA does finally cave and switches the teams around. I am 100% sure that if they switch the teams around, that Canada will be like, oh, we got something to say about this, and they'll have their own little Pride thing on the same day. But let's get into the end of the show here. Let's go to our blind rankings as always. Once again, we're doing the cities. We're having a lot of fun with these. So, cities you'd most want to live in, blind ranking from 1 to 5. Matt, go ahead and give me your list, and then I'll give you mine.
All right, the first one up, Birmingham, Alabama.
Birmingham, Alabama. I think I'm going to split the middle with this, and I'm going to put Birmingham at 3.
Going number 3. All right, next up, Anaheim, California.
Let's see if I learned my lesson from the last episode. Anaheim, 5.
Going 5. California, I imagine, is a tough sell.
Yeah. The only good thing about Anaheim is Disneyland, but even that is...
not enough?
Yeah.
Next up, you have Kansas City, and I'm letting you pick which side of the state line you are on. You can go Kansas or Missouri.
I don't think it really matters. It does, but it doesn't.
They're both pretty red.
Yeah. Plus, you got the Kansas City Chiefs in there.
You could be a Patrick Mahomes guy. You could be a Taylor Swift guy now, too.
No. That would be more of a, I can go there to watch the other teams that show up. I'm going to put Kansas City at 2.
Going number 2, okay.
Yep. I don't want to lock myself. If I put them at 4, then I'm locked in with only 1 and 2 left. So I'm going to put them at 2 and save 1 and 4.
Saving 1 and 4. Your next one is Charleston, West Virginia. Throwing you off a little bit there.
A little bit. That's not the Charleston I thought you were about to give me. Charleston, West Virginia. It's cold in West Virginia.
Very Republican.
Very Republican.
Also the poorest state of the union, by the way.
But what is going to come last? I'm going to gamble. I'm going to put it at 4. Who's my number 1?
Gambling? Okay. Your gamble paid off. Number 1, Salt Lake City, Utah.
All right. Okay. All right. I'll take it. All right.
I'd say overall pretty good.
Yeah.
You regret any of those choices?
I don't think so. Wait, what was number 3 again?
3 was Birmingham.
3 was Birmingham? No, I like it. I think that's a good list. All right, well, to kick things off for you, it is very ironic. So we both come up with our lists separately. We don't tell each other what they are. Your first one that I came up with is Salt Lake City, Utah.
I'm wondering what else is coming, but it's a good place to live, so I'm going to go number 2 and leave 1 open just in case something really good comes.
Okay, number 2 for Salt Lake City. Next, you have Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Very hot.
Mm-hmm.
Not a place I would want to live. So that's got to go number 4.
Okay, number 4. Next up, you have Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Very tempted to split the middle here and leave the extreme ends open, but I'm not as worried about it being cold as you, but given it's such a small town, I'm going to put it 3 and leave the ends open.
Okay.
It wouldn't be my favorite place.
Okay.
Better weather than Albuquerque, though.
Yeah. All right, so you got 1 and 5 left. Next is Dallas, Texas.
Number 1.
Number 1, okay.
Easy.
And in your number 5 spot, you have Denver, Colorado.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, not bad. Dallas, Salt Lake City, Green Bay, Albuquerque, Denver.
Colorado's a pretty liberal city, so I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I knew something really good was coming with Salt Lake City as the first one. I knew I had to leave 1 open.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not bad. Well, everyone, that is it for episode 20 of the Republic Brothers podcast. Leave us a comment if there's anything you want to hear. Make sure to follow the Republic Brothers podcast on social media. Leave us a rating, subscribe, share this episode with a friend. As always, thanks for tuning in. See you next time.